Good morning. How are you? Okay, today we're going to deal with how to translate scientific texts. As you know, previously we dealt with journalistic texts and economic texts. Today we're going to deal with scientific texts. So what is scientific translation? Scientific translation, as I think you all know, is the translation of scientific texts. Thus, a special knowledge will be required. What is this knowledge? And by whom? Of course, on the part of the translator. The translator should be well informed in scientific things, issues, so that he or she can translate scientific texts well. These texts require a deep knowledge of both the source and the target languages, as well as what? What do you think? A proper understanding of the subject. Not everyone can translate scientific texts. You know why? Do you know why? Simply because scientific texts are always precise and specialized. So, if you are asked to translate a topic in medicine, astronomy, chemistry, physics, agriculture, organic diseases, etc., you need to know terminology, you need to know the subtleties of the language, the precise meaning of each and every word coming across you. So, a translator, a scientific translator, has to have certain qualifications. Let's see, who translates scientific text? Scientific translators are often trained linguists. By the way, when you graduate, you will be linguists. You know this because you are specialized in English language. And besides your mother tongue, you will, I hope, you will be a bilingual, a person who masters 2 languages. Who else can translate better than a bilingual? Of course, you will be perfect for this task. I mean translating. So, scientific translators are often trained linguists, students like you, who are well trained, who have a very good linguistic knowledge, and interested in scientific texts, can translate scientific texts. Specialize in fields such as medicine, biology, or chemistry, etc. Or sometimes the translator is not a linguist, actually a scientist, but who masters 2 languages well. For example, a doctor who studied for 7 years in one of the British hospitals and who masters the English language very well, besides, of course, his mother tongue, for instance, Arabic. This person who is specialized in medicine and has a very good language can translate. Not only a linguist who has knowledge in scientific field, but a scientist who has knowledge in linguistics or in two languages. Understood? Okay. What are the techniques that are required on the part of the translator? Of course, there should be some techniques you need to follow in order to translate a good scientific text. Number one, be clear and concise. As you know, clarity and concision, الوضوح and الشنو الإيجاز. يعني you should be concise, you should be brief, you should be clear. Understood? As you know, clarity and concision are the main characteristics or goals of the scientific texts. Every text should be clear. Ambiguity is not allowed in scientific translation. Ambiguity can be found in literary translation because the author opts to ambiguity to create certain effects to his novel or a piece of drama, etc. But in scientific texts, the translator should be clear. There should be no ambiguity in his or her translation, and should be concise. Okay? Number two, keep an eye on the mistakes in the original text. Don't think that authors do not make mistakes. Usually people, including authors, make many mistakes while writing. You are the translator. But if you find a certain mistake in the text, you have to make certain behavior. Let's think. As you know, in scientific text, we have what? We have paragraphs, pages, and we have charts, we have tables, diagrams, figures, etc. Sometimes, if the author makes some mistakes, for example, a number written in the paper in a certain way, but written wrongly in the table, or in the diagram, or in the chart, the translator should be aware of these mistakes. So what can a translator do when he or she finds a mistake like this in a text? What do you think? If a translator, any translator, while translating a text, he finds some mistakes in numbers, in symbols, in formulas. You know, this is a scientific text. So what a translator can do? What do you think, Abbas?
He must correct all these mistakes that he found in this paper.
By himself, without referring to certain parts?
Of course, he has to go back to the original text or to the author of that text in order to correct.
Well done. Very good. Yes. If the author is available, then the translator should communicate these mistakes to the author, and they both correct these mistakes. But sometimes the author is dead, or in another country. There are many scenarios for this thing. In this case, maybe a client asked the translator to translate this text. I mean, for example, you are interested or you need some scientific research on certain issue, and you ask, but you need it for your specialization. You ask a certain translator to translate it to you. In this case, if the original author is not available, you have to go to the client and tell him that there are certain mistakes to be corrected, and you both correct them. Or you make the correction, but in a footnote or between two brackets. You cannot change it by yourself without mentioning it, because this is fidelity. الأمانة في النقل. أكو خطأ وانت اكتشفته، انت ما تصححها من وحدك بدون إشارة. تقول ورد في النص الأصلي هذا الرقم مخالفا لما موجود في متن النص، وانت تصححها وتخليه فوتنوت بالحاشية. ماشي؟ Play with structure and meaning. This is very important. What does it mean? Play with structure and meaning. We're talking about the syntactic structure and the lexical structure. I mean the words and the sentences. As you know, the highly inflected languages such as Arabic, اللغة العربية تختلف عن اللغة الإنكليزية. Arabic is highly inflected. You can see a text, a whole paragraph of 7, 8, 9 lines with a chain of words, ideas, etc., and there is no full stop, there is no comma. I talked to you about this, I think. In Arabic, you may find a whole paragraph, written well, and it is coherent in Arabic. But when you need to translate it into English, for instance, which is different from Arabic in this matter, you have to play with the structure. You have to at least paraphrase it. For example, if you have a long sentence which is actually not a real clear sentence in Arabic, you have to make segmentation. تقسم الجملة، تقسمها. And you need to reproduce it in English. One sentence could be inverted into 3 or 4 English sentences. Understood? You have to play with the structure so that your translation is clear and precise. Good. Thing is, be an avid reader. What's the meaning of avid? Be an avid reader means you much. avid نهم يحب القراءة، وهي مو تجي فقط مع القراءة، تجي yes, avid reader, yes. يعني قارئ نهم يقرأ كل ما تقع عليه عيناه. In order to be a good scientific translator, you need to read a lot. You have to have a small idea about everything. You are not a doctor, but you need to know the names of the body organs. You need to know many kinds of the names and the terminology of diseases, of viruses, of etc. You are not a chemist, but you need to know what H2O stands for. So actually, you need to read a lot. Of course, in science, if you are going to translate, for example, something on chemistry, you need to know something about the formulas, the equations, the symbols of gases and elements, etc. So you have to read a lot in order to make good knowledge about the issues you are translating, okay? The other thing is pay attention to numbers and symbols. Of course, scientific texts are full, rich in numbers, symbols, equations, etc. You have to know what is pi meaning, what does phi mean, etc. You have to know a lot about symbols, and you have to pay attention to numbers. It's not logical. If you are translating, for example, from a text speaking of the distances between planets, and you give wrong numbers, this will be ridiculous. You have to pay attention to these two things. Always proofread your translation. Proofread. Read what you translated over and over. You have to always come back and see what did you translate. Okay? Read it by yourself once or twice. Then let another translator read what you did. In this case, sometimes there are some mistakes that you have made can be corrected by proofreading. If you read what you translated 2 or 3 times, then your friend read it for you, ask him to read it for you. If there is any mistake, it can be corrected, right? What else? Adapt your style to the type of document. What does this mean? Of course, if you are, for example, translating a text, an academic text written for higher studies or BA studies, a text written for college students, this would be formal and very elevated in the syntax and in the vocabulary used. But, for example, if you are translating instructions about how to use a certain medication, drug, this will be read by ordinary people. You don't have to use very formal, elevated language. Understood? So, adapt the style required for the text. If it is dedicated to academic writing, then be high in your level and formal and elevate the vocabulary you use. But if you are, for example, for another example, translating instruction about how to use a certain toy, you need to use a simple language but still precise and clear. Okay? What else? I think these are the main characteristics that you have to have in order to be a good scientific translator. The conclusion. Scientific translation is always a challenge, actually. It is different from other types of translations. The translator must keep up with the constant changes in this field. Understood? By reading a lot, your information remains up to date. So you need to be aware of the changes in the field of science. She or he, of course, translation is not a masculine task. Men and women, many women are so prominent in this field. So when I say she or he, I mean a translator, okay, must be a scientist, as we said, or she or he must read a lot and get as much information about the topics that she or he is going to translate. Mashi? The style of a scientific translator must be very clear and concise. The level of the formality differs according to the type of documents she or he has to deal with. This is an introduction, actually, to what scientific translation is about and what is required from a scientific translator. And I gave you 3 days ago a text. What is it about? Can you tell me, Yusuf?
Yes, it's about the role of individuals in prevention the pollution.
Okay, the role, Yusuf, the role, not the rule. The role of individuals in protecting environment or pollution. So pollution, environment, is something scientific. It speaks about the pollutants in air, land, water, and the role of each and every person on our planet, Earth. The role of each one to prevent pollution. Did you all make your translations?
Yes.
How did you find it?
It's easy and simple.
It's easy and simple. Have you applied what we have just said when you translated?
Of course.
Did you?
Yes.
Really? Good. So, is there any subtlety in this text? I mean, is there any scientific information that should be conveyed precisely? What do you think? Well, it seems that you find it easy and there is no problem in translating it, right? Okay. Shall we start? Who can translate the title? Yes, please, Sumaya. No way. No. Rule. Role.
Of individual in limitation of pollution.
Just a minute. We have prevent, and the noun is prevention. Okay. Of pollution. Translate it.
دور الأفراد في الوقاية من التلوث.
Good. دور الأفراد في الوقاية من التلوث. Okay. سمية, prevent means يمنع. How come you translate it into يقي أو وقاية prevention?
Suitable instead.
So you make your decision that prevention can mean وقاية, and you know the saying prevention is better than what? Than cure. الوقاية خير من العلاج. So can we prevent pollution? Do you think that we can? What is your role, Reem, to prevent pollution as an individual?
Keep my place
Okay.
or my community clean.
Can you keep your community clean? Good. Good. So you mean at least I keep my place surrounding me clean and hygiene, and eventually if every person makes his surrounding clean, eventually the community all will be clean. This is what you meant. Good. So there is a saying, a Chinese saying in this text. Who can? Okay, yes.
If you plant for 1 year, plant rice. If you plant for 10 years, plant trees. And if you plant for 100 years, educate people.
Yes. Yes.
Translate.
Yes.
في المثل الصيني يقول إن كنت تخطط لعام واحد فازرع أرزا وإن خططت ل10 أعوام.
إن كنت تخطط, if you plan for a year, إن كنت تخطط لعام واحد فازرع أرزين. Good.
خططت ل10 أعوام ازرع الزرع.
مريم, ليش إن كنت تخطط وإن خططت, ليش استخدمتي الفعل بطريقتين؟ كان يخطط وخطط. ليش؟
إن كنت تخطط refer to the past. إن كنت وإن خططت to present.
أوكي, go on. وإن خططت ل10 أعوام فازرع شجرة.
خططت ل100 عام تثقف الناس.
فثقف الناس. Good. And the text ends with another saying. Who can say it? The last. Think,
Globally.
act locally. So, do you think that global is the opposite of local? Yes. Yes. Global. What does it mean, Suhad? Global. The last saying, the last sentence. Think globally and act locally. This validates what Reem said. If I keep the area surrounding me clean, so this is a local action, then the globe will be eventually clean. Think globally. I thank you very much for attending, and I hope you make use of what we have said. Thank you.